Nice. So as you move towards your global engagement projects, I want to share a little bit about a project I did with a couple of my 8th grade science classes a few years ago. Um, in that project, we designed kits of science supplies. My students did. They put together activities, different experiments, basic lab supplies, those sorts of things. They put all these together in kits, and those kits ultimately ended up in a school in Haiti. It was a project that took us a while. There were some lessons that we learned, and some things I just want to pass along from that. One is that the challenges that come up along the way are actually very good teaching experiences. So we went the GoFundMe route, and there's all sorts of debate on whether that's a good route to go or not. We went the GoFundMe route to raise the money to purchase the supplies. And we actually had a few other classes that came in and helped us with the fundraising, which is awesome. That's what made it happen. Anyway, in the fundraising, we had a lot of challenges. So we would get like surges of progress, and we'd be like, yes, it's going to be funded quickly. And then it would drop off, and we had a lot of figuring out, like, how do you present that to actually be successful in fundraising? That's not an area of expertise for me, and so that's something we kind of learned together, and that's okay. Those challenges are places that you can learn with your students, and I think those types of challenges that you learn with them are great. Now, as far as Haiti in particular, there's a ton of logistical challenges that popped up, and I think it's important to know that those are going to come up, to accept that some of them might seem insurmountable, because as a teacher, when you're going this, you have to be the eternal optimist. So when we were designing these, it actually took quite a while to get connected for a place for these to end up. I went to Haiti in 2012, working on rebuilding a clinic there that was destroyed in the earthquake. I contacted a handful of schools, and was just really having a hard time getting contacted back. Now, internet in Haiti, and especially at the time we were doing this, super inconsistent, which makes it more difficult. Ultimately, what ended up happening that let us finally get the connection to the school to pull this off is I contacted the folks at the clinic that I worked at, and said, hey, can you walk down the road, a quarter or half a mile down the road from them was the school I was trying to get a hold of, but anytime I tried to contact them, it just wasn't working. I said, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. Can you walk down the road and talk to someone at this school and see what they think? And when they did that, we were finally able to make the connection, but it was a challenge. And so when I was going to school every day as we were working on this, I had to stay in the mindset of, oh yeah, it's going to work. We're going to figure it out. No problem. We're going to figure it out. When really I didn't know. But you kind of have to stay the eternal optimist when you're doing projects like that create those logistical challenges. Also, those logistical challenges are great opportunities to teach your students about what life is like other places. And so one of the logistical challenges that we had to deal with is you can't really ship stuff to Haiti. And so ultimately the way these science kits got to that school is we shipped them from Kansas to Virginia to a church group that was going down there to do some construction work. We shipped them in suitcases to that church group, and that church group ended up checking them as luggage on their flight, and that's how they got delivered. Now, part of the difficulties is with the way Haitian customs work, you have to make sure that nothing in the way you package it looks super exciting, because things have the tendency to disappear as they go through customs. And because there's a ton of corruption. And that's a point where it opened up the avenue to talk about that experience with your students of, corruption in government is a challenge. And that it pops up at many different levels. And it's something that isn't really a thing they had seen. And so it kind of provides a very interesting avenue that all of these logistical challenges that come up are challenges that exist because life there is other than it is here. which is a great avenue to explore students to different cultures. The other thing I think is important is to be honest with yourself about what your intentions or aims are with the project. My biggest aim for that project was to expose my students to what life is like other places. And so that has to remain the focus and the center point. So as you encounter challenges, you have to adapt and change, which is why you want to be very clear with yourself about here's what I intend to do with this experience for my students. This is what I want it to be for my students, what I hope they gain from it, so that as you're pivoting and changing, you don't lose sight of that, and you can kind of have a focal point of, okay, this isn't working the way I thought it was. Here's how we're going to adapt, but we're going to make sure that they still get to understand what life is like somewhere else. So I also attached a link from an interview I did about that project. There's nothing super special about how we did it or any, great brilliance or anything. But I think it is an example that we learned from. I think is beneficial for my students. I learned a lot as a teacher, and something I want to be sure to pass along.